What is going on, fellow developers? My name is Tyler Potts, and in today's video we're going to be creating our Vue.js pop-up component. So this component will allow us to pop up a pop-up however we want to. So we can trigger it by clicking a button, we can trigger it by a timer, we can trigger it by an event, we can trigger it by however we want. It is that simple, and you can create multiple of them really easily. So let me show you how this works. So we've got a few pop-ups example here, and if I click open pop-up, you can see it opens this pop-up. We have a simple pop-up. You can put whatever content you want in here as well. It's all interchangeable and updatable. The pop-up can look however you want. Now we can hit close pop-up, which is cool, but also if we refresh the page after 3 seconds time has passed, you'll see a timed pop-up has now popped up, and we get it here. Currently this pop-up just fits to the content we have inside of it, so that's why the button one is a lot bigger, but you can again style this however you want. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay guys, so I'm just in a directory on the terminal, and I'm just going to run Vue create, and I'm just going to call this Vue popups -YouTube. Now hit enter, and it's going to ask us a few questions on how we want to set up our app. So we're going to manually select features. We're going to use CSS preprocessors and hit enter. That's the only one we want. We also want to use version 3, or Vue 3, sorry, not Node 3. Sass with Node Sass, ESLint, and I'm just going to click the rest of these as default. Now this is going to run, it's going to create as a boilerplate, and I will see you once that has completed. Okay guys, now that is finished, we're going to CD into Vue popups YouTube, and then once we're in this directory, we're going to say npm, or we're going to do code dot. You can open this up in any text editor you want. I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code, and then and I'm just going to say npm run surf, hit enter, and that is going to open up our Vue directory or Vue app in VS Code, and it's also going to start our surf here. So if we refresh the right side, you'll see it's now a welcome to your Vue.js application. Okay guys, so we have this source folder here. We don't need the hello world component, we don't need this whole assets folder, and we don't need any of the stuff inside of main here. So let's just close that. We don't need any of this for now. Let's just remove it. We'll add it all in when we need it. And we're going to leave this as default, just a little bit of styling there, just so we don't have to mess around with too much styling. I'm also going to select everything. I'm going to convert indentations to tabs, and then I'm just going to tab using 4, just because I think it looks a little nicer. It's easier to read in my opinion. I'm just going to create a main here, and I have a H1 which says Vue popups. Like that. There you go. We have a Vue popups title. I'm then going to create a button, and inside the button we're just going to say open popup. And there you go. So we've got our boilerplate set out. We now need a popup component. So under components, create a new file. I'm just going to call this popup.vue, and I'm just going to run the Vue here to create this little boilerplate thing here. Now what I'm going to do, I'm also going to, oh, it's already tabs 4, my bad. In here we're going to create a div which says .popups, and then, or pop-up, not pop-ups, that won't make sense, .popup, which we're then going to add inside of it a pop-up inner. So we're just going to do .popup -inner. We're then going to say slot. Now what slot does here, this allows us, so any content we write in between our tags, so normally a component is, for example, pop up, and then you close it there and then. It's just a one tag. It doesn't need a closing tag. But in this case, we're going to have it so it is a closing tag. So inside of this, we could say something such as h2 my popup. And that will basically, anything we put here, so this popup, anything in between these tags will appear where this slot is. And then underneath this, we're just going to have another button. It's going to have the class of popup close, and we're just going to say close popup. I'm just going to break this down so it's easier to read. There you go. Let's we don't actually need this sidebar open anymore, so we can zoom in a little bit to the code, and there we go. So we've got this. Hit save. That's not going to do anything. Let's go in here. Let's import popup from, We can do ./components/popup. Now we're going to do an export default, and in here we're going to create a setup, and we're just going to return popup. Hit save, and there you go. My popup now appears here underneath the view popup. So we've got the standard open popup and then our actual popup here. So let's go into our popup and let's style it. So inside of here, we're just going to say lang equal sass, and then we're going to scope this to this component. So this CSS will only ever match the component. We're then going to say .popup, and inside of popup, we're just going to give it a, we're just going to give it a position of fixed, a top 0, left 0, a right of 0, and a bottom of 0, a C index of 99, and a background color of RGBA 0, 0, 0, 0.2. Save, and there you go. Now we're going to go in our popup inner, and well, actually first we're just going to display flex, and we're going to align item center. We're then going to justify content center. Let's break it up so it looks different. And in here, we're just going to give this a background of white. We also need it to be position relative. Actually, we don't. What am I about? A background of white with a padding of about, say, 32 pixels. And there you go. We've got our pop-up. So we've got our pop-up styled. It's just a simple one. Again, you can style this pop-up however you like. For now, I'm just going to keep it simple just because we're not doing a styling. We're doing a functionality tutorial. Oh, I just closed the pop-up. Let me reopen it. There we go. So now back in our app, we need to actually come up with a way to toggle these. Now, the way I like to toggle them is by using if. It's obviously what Vue is supposed to use. But to do that, we need some sort of Boolean. And to create a reactive Boolean, we need to import ref. And we're going to import that from Vue. So this is part of the composition API. And then inside of our setup, we're just going to say const popup triggers. We could just call this triggers, but I'm going to do it as popup triggers. And then all we need to do is give these a name. So we can say the button trigger is equal to false, and we can also have our timed trigger equal to false. So these are now our triggers. So now we need to pass these inside of here, and we could say for this first one, if popup triggers dot button trigger. So if that is equal to true, so let's set this one to true quickly, you'll see our pop-up appears. If it's equal to false, it won't appear. And there you go. So that's how we can show it. So we can call this my button pop-up. And let's create a second one, which we're going to put underneath. Let's move that down. And this one will be the timed trigger. So this is going to be my timed pop-up. We can give these some text. Just say lorem. There you go. So let's turn on the timed text and set that to true. And there you go. We've got a little timed pop-up there. So let's change that back to false. Now, how we're going to do this is we're going to create a function that's to toggle the pop-up. So here we're going to say const toggle pop-up is equal to the trigger. And it's going to be an arrow function, which just says pop-up triggers dot value, because obviously we can't just get this straight. We need to use the value, and then we need to say the trigger. So we can pass through the trigger here and set that equal to not this. So it's literally that is the only functionality we actually need. So we need to actually pass this through, and there you go. So what we're doing is we've got this toggle pop-up function that all it does is changes these from true to false and false to true. So let's copy the toggle function. Let's go up to our pop-ups, and let's say, well, on our button for starters, let's just say on or at click is equal to an arrow function that calls toggle pop-up, and then it will also take the name of the pop-up trigger. So this one will be button trigger. Hit save. Now, if we hit open pop-up, you can see our pop-up opens, but we can't close it. We need some way to close it. So let's actually pass through our toggle pop-up function. Let's create a close pop-up function, or we could just call this toggle pop-up because it is a toggle pop-up. Toggle pop up. Set this equal to another arrow function, so it's going to be the exact same as what we did up here. So we could literally copy this and paste that there. And there you go. So if I just break this down quickly, including this, there you go. You can see it literally is as simple as that. So now inside of our pop-up, up here, we can actually, in exports, we can get our props and set that equal to toggle pop-up. And then we can take this and on our button call at click is equal to toggle pop-up. And that is all we need to do. So now if we click close, you can see it close, open and close. And that is as easy as it is. So let's just move this center full screen. So as we click it, you can see our pop-up now works. Let's put this back to its original size and move that over. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to set the timed pop-up. So let's go to our app view. So we've got our pop-up trigger, but how do we trigger the timed one? We also need to pass this function on this timed one as well. So we're just going to call this timed trigger. We could just call it timed, but I feel like time trigger works. But here you go. So we've got our button and our timed. But down inside of our setup, we just need to set timeout, call an arrow function that just goes in here, and we can just say pop-up triggers dot timed or value dot timed trigger is equal to true. And after 3000, which 3000 milliseconds is equal to a second, if we refresh and we wait 1, 2, 3, and there you go, you can see it's now popped up. We can close it and that will never appear again because that is a timed trigger unless we refresh the page, in which case the time trigger will then trigger again. And there you go, you've got your time pop-up. We can close down and we can open up our normal pop-up. There you go. So it is as simple as that, guys. I hope you've learned something new here using Vue.js, even if that's just something simple such as the slot command or even how you will trigger or go about building a pop-up. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, smash that subscribe button, and don't forget to leave a comment if you have any questions. Now, guys, you can support the channel if you want to see more of this sort of thing by going to the description below and clicking on the Ko-Fi link and either following or donating a small price of a coffee. Which will help me buy more gear, more stuff, and even put more time into my videos. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching this video, and peace out.